from about 1980, 81. Always loved music. I said right in my other video about who I was really interested in pop music. We had, as a family, a thing called a stereogram, or radiogram they're sometimes called, and it was a big wooden box type of contraption that had a radio and a record player in, and it sat in the living room in the corner. And I remember putting my headphones in and listening to records. It would annoy my parents because they could hear the needle as it played the records, but I was listening to the music. Eventually, I think my parents must have got so fed up that they allowed me to put this stereogram in my room. And it was then really started the love of vinyls. Cassettes had come in, but it was still seen as that you would buy music on vinyl because it was just a better quality. It wasn't quite as good as vinyl to buy things on cassettes. You had to have a real high-end system if you were going to buy cassettes. So I stuck with vinyls, and eventually, obviously, as the decade went along, I got into cassettes more. My music evolved as the decade went along. I was so interested in synth music, synthesizers, stuff that was so new and fresh sounding, and something, you could hear things like orchestra sounds, but then to hear something like a synthesizer was completely new, and I loved that. And obviously, to this day, I still love that sort of music. But collecting vinyls was a thing that I did for a long time, until obviously things like CDs came along and they took over. It's amazing now for it to come full circle. It's just incredible that people are spending the time seeking out vinyl versions of albums. Today I went into my local town in Chester Street here, and I put it on one of my socials. I said that I think it's the only shop that sells vinyls in Chester Street secondhand. I don't think there is any places that sell brand new vinyls, but this guy, this is the first time I've actually managed to get to see his shop, because he's never open, and he hasn't got any signs on the door to say what his opening times are. And I went in, and he's got some really good vinyls, some really, really ones that I would like, but the cost, and I think that anybody now can agree that the cost of vinyls is incredible. I mean, you would probably pay something £4 or £5 in the 1980s for a main sort of LP, for a full album, and maybe £6 or £7 for a double. But they weren't as popular as just the single albums. But now I went in to look at an album, and this chap, secondhand this is, wanted £25, £35. And there was one particular album, Introspective, by Pet Shop Boys, that came out in 1988. He wanted £65 for it. And to me, it's incredible how on earth they can charge this sort of thing, and who would want to spend that money. I can't afford it. And I think it's the good thing is shopping around, getting, looking for local bargains, and looking for stuff online that it may be a bit cheaper. And obviously when I came out, I had a look and found this album for a lot cheaper, and you can actually buy it brand new for a fraction of the price as well. It was a friend who said to me in the early 2000s, he said, look, vinyls and CDs and cassettes will fade away once streaming has come in. MP3s were becoming more popular, and he said to me, it'll just be streaming. There'll be nothing else. And I was a bit more hesitant than that, because I knew what it was like to purchase an album and have that physical item in your hand. And I was a bit more wary about that. And I'm going to put in the description, there's from Time Out article, a web article saying that for the 17th year running, vinyl sales have increased, and apparently it was 6.7 million vinyl units sold last year, which is incredible. It's just, I mean, the 2000s, people just thought, no, nobody bought vinyl. No one was interested in it. You had the people who had been continuously playing it and they hadn't left it, but then its popularity just seemed to completely wane, and obviously CDs and the arrival of the streaming services seemed to be killing off that sort of market. But for whatever reason, and I'm sure there are loads of reasons, that people are wanting to have that physical item in their hands. One of the things that the streaming services, I remember a few years ago, was trying to make it some sort of selling point, is that you could download these songs from the streaming and play them offline. I thought, well, I do that. All the CDs that I bought or the albums that I bought, I rip them, put them onto my system. I obviously don't, for copyright reasons, I don't let anybody else use them, and I don't, allow people to copy them. And I think this is one of the things that's allowed things like vinyl, certainly cassettes as well, and CDs to come back, because people want an ownership. One of the albums I remember in 1993 by Pet Shop Boys was called Very, and it came out, I think it was the end of 93, and I was so excited because it came with a 2-album case. The first one was like a Lego case, and I remember being just absolutely in awe of seeing it, because it was just like a piece of square Lego. The second album, the second sort of release of it, was a similar sort of plastic Lego, but with a dance album attached to it. And I remember going into the local Woolworths in the early 90s and asking the lad there to order me Pet Shop Boys' Very Relentless. And I think they re-released that just a couple of years ago, remastered. But I was excited because I remember thinking, I'm waiting for a phone call for them to ring me up and say the album's here, and going down from where I was living at the time with my parents to pick the album up and to have that physical album in my hand, listening for it, because you might have heard one single that might have been released, but it's not like now where they'll drop an album and the whole album you'll hear it all straight away, or they'll release, say, 5 or 6 songs before you get. There was maybe 1 or 2 songs at the most, then the album, and I would sit, and I remember going through this album over 30 years ago, listening to each song and thinking, yeah, I like that one, and then reading all the information about it. It was a time where you weren't just really looking forward to the music, you were really looking forward to holding the physical item in your hand. You knew that was your copy. You knew that you owned that piece of the music and the artists and things like that. And I think this is, again, another one of the many reasons why people have gone back to vinyl. It was last year and the year before, and I'd heard about it. It was through a friend who asked me to pick up a couple of vinyls for him for Record Store Day here in the UK. And I know they have, I'm sure it's a worldwide thing as well. And I remember last year I queued for 3 hours, and this year, thank goodness, it was only an hour and a half. But there were hundreds and hundreds of people queuing for vinyls, and people who were much, much younger than me, who obviously were avid collectors and who wanted a limited edition of a certain album that had come out. I find joy because people are experiencing that joy that I had 30, 40 years ago. You have the physical item in your hand, you know that is a genuine piece of the music that that artist has produced. In the last 12 months that I uh, finally fixed the uh, turntable I bought a few years ago, and got it to the right speed. I didn't realize that the speed of the modern turntables could be adjusted. And when I got it, it was both 33 and 45 speeds were slightly fast, and it annoyed the hell out of me. But it takes a lot of knowledge and certainly skill to try and adjust the turntable to get it the right speed. So I did that in the last 12 months. And then that really reignited my love again for my vinyls. So I went back and dug out the vinyls, and played some of them that I hadn't listened to, and music that I'd had bought 40 years ago that I hadn't even listened to. And some of them, the albums that I bought, the Kids from Fame, weren't even released on CD and hadn't been released in any other format apart from the vinyl. And it was amazing just to listen to those songs again. What I do like is the fact that a lot of artists release 12-inch versions of songs, so you get an expanded version of a single. I don't particularly like dance remixes. I'm not keen on those. So there's only very, very few that songs can be a little bit better because of it. But 12-inch versions of songs are something that the artists don't really release now. It just gives me so much joy that people are enjoying vinyl, so that they're getting their item and they are listening to the music. It's just sad at the moment the way music is. It just seems to be a whole mixture of genres. So you have R&B, rap, everything in together. Where when I grew up, it was a very sort of one style of type of music. It's just good that you can now have that joy of going to buy a new album. I just love music, and I could talk about it for hours on end.